Hey everybody, welcome to Parenting with a Purpose. I am your host, Donna Janelle, where we bring back the responsibility, nobility, and beauty back into parenting. As I stated before, parenting is not for the weak, right? There's challenges. It's a hard night life out here for parents, honestly, especially in this generation where things aren't like they used to be. And I know we say that in every generation that things aren't like but they truly are not. The generation where I grew up in, we had beepers. Everybody got cell phones, iPads, computers, TVs now. With the smart TVs, everything that you can do on your computer, you can do on your television. So, our kids have access to everything, which we didn't before. And it does cause a problem because a lot of us, older folks, I'm a little bit old, but not old, can't kind of get with that technology because every time I turn around and I blink, my kids are on some type of technology, and I feel like I'm competing with that. But as you know, it's hard out here for us, right? It's hard out here for parents. It's hard out here for children. So my job here is to bring back the responsibility, nobility, and beauty back into parenting. Parenting is hard and challenging, yet it has so many beautiful times. And, as parents, we are the bows and our children are the arrows, and they will land wherever we aim them eventually. It might not be today. It might not be tomorrow. It might not even be 2 years, 5 years. It takes time, right? So they're going to land as long as we clothe them with the things that they need, as long as we give them the tools, as long as we provide, as a safe environment, nurturing environment, and those things like that are the tools that I'm talking about that we need in parenting, right? As long as we provide those things, eventually down the line, they're going to get it. And we all got it, right? Eventually down the line, we got it. So that's what I'm talking about in parenting. So tonight, right, our guest tonight, we're talking about, as you know here at Parenting with a Purpose, I love having engaging conversations, talking about things we don't talk about, right? I'm not afraid to talk about anything on this platform. I'm talking about stuff that really needs to, kind of like the elephant in the room, really needs to be said, but we really don't say it because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We don't want to, have parents look at differently than such a positive light or even any issues because everybody probably think that they're the perfect parent, right? Everybody probably think that the way that they parent is the best way to parent. Sometimes I kind of think about that too, honestly. So tonight's guest is the one and only Rhonda Santos.
You're hilarious.
And then tonight we're going
just loving all this for you.
So tonight we're going to be talking about intergenerational curses. We're going to be talking about narcissistic abuse and leading with love. So tonight we're going to be tapping into all these different things, some type of mental disorder, whatever it is that sometimes hinder us as parents to parent our children the best way as possible because we're still trying to heal ourselves, right? So as before, I always talk about we have to heal ourselves so that we don't bleed all over our children. So tonight we're going to be talking about that. We're going to get some healing tonight, and we're going to hear from Rhonda. What's up, Rhonda?
I can't believe well, first off, I just want to thank you for just really meeting me where I was with this, because we've been talking about having this conversation for a while.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I really try in all things to try to lead with love. Mm-hmm. And I know that there are topics that, we need to be discussing and things that we need to be putting out there for the benefit of others. But I feel like it has to be done, a certain way. So I appreciate your patience, and I'm so excited to finally be here. Can we see his shoes? Can you just?
Why we gotta show my shoes? Everybody wants to see our shoes. She wants to see me blinging. As y'all know, I'm a blinger. So all right. So tell us a little bit about yourself because the subject is hot and heavy. We about to get real in here.
Okay. So my name is Rhonda Santos. I am from Philadelphia. South Philly, and I live in southern New Jersey. I'm a registered nurse with a master's in nursing with a specialization in healthcare informatics. I'm currently teaching. I'm a nurse educator. Psych is my specialty. I'm also a clinical nurse informaticist, and that's just a fancy way of saying that I'm an IT nurse that helps various healthcare organizations. Everybody wants to build the best electronic health record. And so as nurses with extensive clinical background, we're able to come to the design table and help to speak to those workflows. So I'm doing that remotely and teaching. I'm actually finishing up my doctoral degree.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. But I'm excited for you because you have 5 months. Wait a minute. 5 months and 13 days.
Not even 5 months.
What?
That's the graduation date. But the graduation. Wait, how do you know 5 months and 13 days? Yes, that's the graduation date. But I'm actually finished school May 3rd.
I'm talking about July.
Yeah, July is the graduation date. Yeah.
I'm really excited.
Last final going to be July 3rd, y'all. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we can be like,
sure. Like when I'm like, okay, so I know we're going to be talking about narcissistic abuse. I know we're going to be talking about just really healing, our inner child. Childhood trauma is really the gift that keeps on giving. Right. If we don't recognize it and do something about it. But I wanted to just really come from a place of love. And I'm excited because I can say with conviction, after many years, I'm finally healed. Mm-hmm. And it's a process. I mean, you have to keep working on yourself, obviously. It doesn't happen overnight, but I just wanted to share some of the things that I feel like I've done and changed in my life that really helped me heal and get me to a better place. First of all, disclaimer, I am not a minister. I am not, any type of content creator. I'm not an influencer. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not.
You're not one of them, huh?
I'm not. I'm speaking straight from, experience. And I just want to say that if, during our conversation, something speaks to someone and they think, oh, that sounds like my dad or my mom or whoever, we're not saying that that's, that they're a narcissist or, or the antisocial personality, which we'll get into as well. But we're just saying that you need to, it's something worth looking into.
We're not saying that's them, but they might have some tendencies that you.
Or if it's you think it's you.
Right.
It's worth, exploring. So to speak.
So what we're saying is that whatever you see on the show tonight, you may be, it might be a little bit familiar to you or something like that. But make sure you go get some professional help as it relates to that topic or subject.
Exactly. It took me a long time because a lot of times when we're talking about loved ones, we may see the red flags, right? Mm-hmm. But we want to try to overlook it because we want to see the good in them. Right. We want it to work. Right. We want them to love us back. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we're empaths. You do know that, right? Mm-hmm. We're super duper empaths.
Absolutely.
And so we are a target. They have radar. People with antisocial and narcissistic personality disorders are attracted to us. They're attracted to our empathy, our ability to connect with people, and oftentimes they don't even feel. They can't even feel. Relevant unless they're getting, like you hear about that narcissistic supply. Yeah. My thing is, I knew that our conversation was obviously going to get pretty heavy into that, but what I have learned is you really don't want to give that a whole lot of attention. Right. Okay.
Let's backtrack for a minute. Yeah, so let's talk about what is narcissist and
So
let's talk about that so that the audience understands.
Let me just back up just real quick, coming from a place, someone who, I was a mother at 15, homeless and displaced, domestic violence, intergenerational family trauma, right? Dysfunction. I can say with conviction that I'm really grateful that I never had to deal with any addiction issues because I think, we'll talk more about that later as far as, and with parenting too, like I feel like had that been my path, I would not have made it, for sure. But yeah, it's definitely made me very grateful. I'm very grateful for how far God has brought me in my life. And that experience, I can't explain it, but everything that's happened that I've gone through, all the trauma, all the abuse, the abandonment, the neglect, I would do it all over again to be the woman that I am now. Okay. I would literally do it all over again. So I take nothing from my journey. But what I want to say is I don't want to spend a whole lot of time perseverating about the narcissist because I think that's a mistake that we make. Right. And just to give you an example of what I mean. I know someone who definitely did experience narcissistic abuse, magnified, horrific abuse at the hands of someone who was potentially a malignant narcissist. And her way of taking back her power, right, was to own it, right, and to create a platform for it,
right,
you know, to talk about it, to bring awareness. And everywhere you hear about, now it's just the word is just being thrown around.
Right, yeah.
You know, everybody's a narcissist now. If you're manipulative, you're a
narcissist, right?
So,
that's that heavy used word right now.
If you're overly confident, you're a narcissist. You know, so, but she wanted to bring awareness. Great. I applaud everyone that's bringing that content forward. You know, do your thing. I'm not knocking you. But she told me, she said, you know, and this was after about a year on this platform, and, you know, she said, I still feel like I'm stuck. Like, I'm still there. I'm still in that place. So you see how it served her in the beginning.
Right.
Because she needed to take her power back. Right. And quite often people with narcissistic personality disorder, or people who have narcissistic traits, right? Because we can't, and we'll talk about that, we can't diagnose. But they take away our power. So it served her in the beginning to, you know, just kind of like take her power back and to really understand the pathology of the individual, so she could realize that, wow, like it wasn't me, because they make you think you're crazy, right? But then I feel like when you start giving them too much attention, and every day,
what they
all
want,
the
though.
Content, yes.
The narcissist wants attention.
Yes, if you understand the pathology, you understand that you are, in essence, feeding their need for attention. That is what, you know, narcissistic supply represents for them. So I just feel like, let's get back to what you need to do to heal.
Right.
And so many times we become obsessed with this person, right? This, you know, whether they're narcissistic or not, you know, they could just be they could just be a bad person, right? A not so nice person, a manipulative person, an abusive person. Let's stop trying to psychoanalyze everything. And you know, I'm all about the why, you know, and understanding what makes people tick. But we have to set boundaries with that. We have to get past that, because then you're not able to really focus and like do the real work.
Right.
And narcissistic personality disorder is in the DSM. That is a diagnosis. And unless you are a mental health specialist qualified to diagnose that individual, you can't call someone a narcissist.
Absolutely.
And nowadays you can destroy someone's reputation, you know, all the social media platforms, and just, you know, you can say anything, and it's and I just don't agree with that, and that's not where I'm coming from.
Right. I think it's important, though, so that people understand, you know, because not everybody's going to look at DSM, right? Not everybody's going to look at that, right?
Right, of
so
course.
For the sake of the audience, though, just give a little, not diagnose anybody, but what is narcissism, according to what we know narcissist is, right? Because a lot of times people may be in a situation, again, we're not diagnosing anybody, we're telling you didn't want to explore some of these behaviors, right? But not even understanding what some people think, that the way that they're being treated, the way that they're responding, the way that they're living their life, even parenting their children now, right? That they don't even recognize that there is something really wrong with it, and that it's not you, it's the other person. So I think sometimes, like, we get into, and honestly, like for myself, even growing up, when I was dealing with situations with my parents, like, and I couldn't understand, I thought I was the biggest problem, right? I thought it was me. They were behaving this particular way because of me, right? Not knowing that they actually had a problem, right? Or even any friends that I had, right, who would be obsessive and things like that. And I'd be like, oh, now, when you grow up in an area where you didn't think that you received the love, right? You didn't think that you received, you know, all the things that we know that children need growing up, right? So then when you start getting in relationships or friendships or anything outside of that, you think because somebody's obsessive with you, right, that oh, wow, I'm the bomb.
But why does that happen? That happens because those experiences in childhood, right, became intimacy to you.
Right.
Right? So if you're in a relationship that doesn't have drama, that doesn't have confusion, that doesn't have abuse, right? That's the relationship that you ultimately think you should be in and you want to be in. That's what you're attracted to.
Right.
And that's why so many times, I feel like, because I know when I thought I had healed, again, you have to look at your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
What is your behavior communicating?
Right.
Are you still in that cycle?
Mm-hmm.
Do these people still have radar for you? Are they still attracted to you? Are you still attracted to them? Mm-hmm. I think more focus needs to be put on what we need to do for ourselves.
Healing the inner child.
Healing that inner child. Right. I have a photo in my living room. It's actually a sketch portrait that it was from a picture when I was like 6 years old. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember Sears.
Yeah, I mean, why you playing me like that? Rhonda. Oh, what? We the same. Now, stop playing me.
So I'm Generation X.
What am I?
Are you Gen X?
I don't know. I'm 43. So what generation is that? Listen, I'm about to be 44. I'm Generation Donna. So yes.
Yeah, I think you're like on the cusp or something. Anyway, Sears. But my grandmother had took it was me and a cousin to Sears, and we had our portraits done or whatever. And anyway, she sent the wallet size to my father. He was in the service, and he took the picture, and he had sketched into like a portrait, and finally gave it to me like all these years later. Mm-hmm. And I have it in my living room, and it's a reminder. It serves as a reminder for me. Like every time I walk by it, I think, what am I doing for her today? Mm-hmm. Right. Like, what am I doing to just, because a lot of times we don't even really know that we're wounded. Mm-hmm. We think that we're healed, but we're really not. There's a lot going on below the veil of consciousness that we haven't been able to deal with. And I'm telling you, when they say you live your life, forward, but you learn it backwards.
Yeah.
It's so true, because as you get older, so much of that stuff starts to come back on you. It's like you're not getting away from anything.
Right.
So I just use that as a reminder to just, we have the power to treat ourselves well, to love ourselves unconditionally. And I think that we need to put more focus and emphasis on that and less on these people that are dysfunctional.
Right. But how do you know? All right, so let me ask you a question. How do a person know, or you can share that with me about you, how do you know that the inner child needed to be healed?
Because I continue to make poor decisions in my life as far as the people that I would allow in my circle, the kind of abuse that I would accept, and realizing that I didn't love myself enough because I really just never, my self-esteem, I never really had, and that's the thing, like when you have to be so careful with children, because remember we talked about this before, how their egos can't process that if an adult harms them, that it's something wrong with that adult. It's nothing wrong with them. Children can't process that.
Right.
So there's really not a whole lot you can do to try to reassure them that the abuse that they endured, or the way, how.
That part right there is like, listen, hold on, stay in there, stay in the fight.
And that's the thing, you do carry it with you. And so, and it shows up in your relationships. It shows up in how you show up in the world.
Right.
A lot of times, when we talk about anger and depression, depression is basically anger turned inward. Think about suede and leather. Yeah. It's very similar, because a lot of times we repress those emotions because we can't deal with it. I'm glad that's always been my defense mechanism, because to be perfectly honest with you, if I wasn't capable of repressing a lot of what I experienced, I wouldn't have made it. Yeah. I think that was definitely being able to bury all that deep inside until I could deal with it. But yeah, for me, it was realizing who I am in Christ. Okay. Once I really realized that, yes, the Holy Spirit is here, is within me. I've always led with love. I don't know how to be any different. I've always been very forgiving. It hasn't been hard for me to forgive people. The problem is when you're a repeat offender. You're like, wait a minute, I forgave you. Yeah. And I'm still allowing you to have access, and you're still doing the same thing. So it got really hard for me to get to a point where I realized that, because my grandmother, I'm my grandmother's child, and she raised me to be all about family. And I still am, and that's the thing. You have to learn how to love from a distance. The best thing you can do is pray for these people.
Right.
And in doing that, though, in order to be able to do it and mean it, because you have to mean it, right? It has to really be here. But in order for you to really be able to do it, you need to be able to forgive them.
Right.
And, and like the word says, when you do forgive them, you cannot curse them, and you have to bless them. So you cannot curse them, as in talk bad about them, and then you need to pray for them. Right. And what people need to realize is when you pray for others, God deals with them, basically.
Right.
And that's what you're basically praying for.
Right.
For him to deal with them, to grant them like revelation and show them the error of their ways, hopefully lead them to Christ, because otherwise I don't see them being able to really change. And when we talk about the narcissists, they are really, the professionals consider them psychiatrists consider them treatment failures.
Right. Yeah, I remember you.
Yeah. Because they will if they go into therapy,
right,
they will try to manipulate the therapist. So, and remember, they don't think anything's wrong with them, which is why oftentimes they don't even have a diagnosis.
Right.
They're diagnosed when they're institutionalized, right? Where they can be studied, whether it's in corrections, whether, they're in a mental health institution, then they can get that diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. But independent of that, they're not going to go and they're not going to get help. They don't think that they have a problem. They think you have a problem.
Right. And because they think you have a problem, then you start thinking you have a problem. Like, I start thinking I'm the problem.
You do. They gaslight you.
Yeah, gaslight.
They gaslight you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you, all right, so we talked about, the inner child, because a lot of times when you grow up in, certain situations, traumatic situations, like you deal with PTSD, like pretty much a lot. And sometimes you don't even, I know for me, I'll speak for me, like I didn't even realize that I still needed to heal the inner child until probably about 5 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. What was the year before COVID, 2019?
It was around about that time for me too, where I thought I had made so much progress, but it was like, okay, no.
I still, but I need, and a lot of people don't even realize that. As for parenting, though, one of the reasons why, a lot of times we have these intergenerational, what we call curses or intergenerational things that we deal with from children to children, generation to generation, is because a lot of times we don't heal the inner child, we don't heal ourselves, and then again, I always say we're bleeding on our kids, like we have open wounds that we won't address ourselves or take care of ourselves, because at the end of the day, one of the things is so true is that you're really only responsible for yourself. Even as parents, you know, legally we're responsible for our children and the upbringing them, but we can't make nobody do anything. We can't change anybody's mind. We can live a life before them and then they decide to change their mind. But it's not like I could say, yo, you better do this A, B, and C, right? You better treat me this way. You better do. No, it's literally we have the power.
Yeah.
So talk about the power that we have.
So I feel like, again, like in order to regain that power, really just to take it back, you can't keep repeating the same behavior, right? Because that's insanity. So you have to figure out, and I'm not telling you to go no contact. You have to do what works for you.
Right.
No contact may not work for you. Some people don't have the option to go no contact. For me, it got to a point where, like with certain relatives, I realized that the level of jealousy was astronomical, and I would have never imagined it to be that. I thought that these people would be happy for my success because I had such a rough beginning. You know, I thought they were like celebrating my success, and they weren't. If anything, it bothered them. And the reason why is because, and I understand why God had to remove them too, because they couldn't deal with me when I was in the valley. They can't deal with me now. And the thing is, when I was in the valley, I think the only reason why they were dealing with me is so they could bask in the glow of my misery. to be honest.
Right.
Because I have seen that. This is
Right.
not innuendo. These have been my experiences. So saying all that to say, it was very hard to admit to myself that these people didn't love me.
Wow.
And that,
Yeah.
right? Who wants to do that?
Yeah.
Right? You're already feeling unloved and unlovable, right? And then to really admit to yourself, and a lot of times your friends try to give you hope. They don't understand. They think it's just, you're just having, hey, all families have their problems. So they a lot of times will invalidate your feelings, not even knowing it. They'll invalidate you and say things like, oh, well, yeah, that's your so-and-so, so it'll be okay. But it's like, no, you're giving that person hope. And hope, I hung on for a long time because of hope, because I really thought that there was love, right? When you can stay in a dysfunctional relationship, right? Whether it's with your family or whether it's with a significant other, if you feel like they really truly love you.
Right.
But I remember when I realized that they didn't.
Right.
That was hard. Right. That was very hard. But again, when I say I'm healed, I know that I'm healed now because I would not be able to have this conversation before when I wasn't healed. I would be in tears.
Right.
And another thing is I'm still maintaining my boundaries, even though I do have moments where I miss them, incredibly. But that's when I just pray. Because at the end of the day, I believe God can change anybody.
Absolutely.
God can change anybody.
Absolutely.
So I put it on the altar, how you say. I tried to make things work. I know that I fought the good fight. And then it just kind of got to a point where, I had to really pray about it. And I asked God to show me some things. And God is good about showing me some things. When you're, that was when I realized that I had an anointing.
Okay.
Right? And so did you was it a time where, you realized in your life that you really had favor and that you really had an anointing on your life?
Well, when I think back on everything, I knew apparently God was there. I just didn't know he was there at the time.
Right.
But it probably, the transition of my sister is when I realized that, that's something.
For me, it was looking at how, just really looking back, and because there were times where I always believed in God, but, I've never been much of a religious person, even though I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school, did all my sacraments and all that. I really, consider myself more of a spiritual person. And there were times where I knew I believed in God, but I questioned whether or not Jesus was our savior. And the reason why is because I was wondering why wasn't he, if that was the case, why wasn't he there?
That was my first.
Where are you?
Listen, let me tell you.
But he was there all along, and it makes me think about footprints. How he was there because, again, for me, like being homeless in this place, and I mean, I lived in the Badlands, for Christ's sake. Like, if you're familiar with North Philly,
yeah,
like I was there, and lived in drug houses and never got high. Who does that?
Right.
That's a testimony in itself.
Right.
So there, he was like bringing me, through all that. But in hindsight, I know why I had to go through those experiences, because working mental health, working with the forensic population, not guilty by reason of insanity population, for years in mental health, was very rewarding work, but see that all that experience that I got from being in the street.
Right. You was able to deal for that.
But they knew I genuinely had regard for them.
Right.
I was not looking down on them. These were people that walked me to my door at night as a young girl getting off of the bus late, coming from work, and made sure I got in the door. So I learned at a very young age that they had value, and no matter what they did, it's not our job to judge anybody. I think that's why so many people are turning away from religion, is because people come with such judgment. Like, no, Jesus paid for our sins.
Right.
Okay. Past, present, and future. And our only job is to believe and to love people. And I think
one of the things, as we think about parenting, right, one of the reasons why it seems like there's so much lack of love is because we tend not to love ourselves.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, it's interesting. I said this on Sunday to my bonus father. I said, there's two scriptures that I think about, right? One of them is love your neighbor as yourself, right? And the other one is love your neighbor as I have loved you, right?
That's right.
So a lot of times when we say love your neighbor as yourself, most of the time people don't love themselves or don't know how to love themselves. So it's very difficult for me to love my neighbor. But if you start thinking about love your neighbor as I have loved you, and you start, like you said, thinking about your experiences, and God got equity in us because we're still here, right? So if we start thinking about that more of loving them, because if I love them as God has loved me realizing that God loves me, now I can love.
Now you're automatically, and thank you for going there, because that's exactly what I was thinking. For example, like, and this is really, I mean, this is true. So like, I have a very extensive music genre, okay? But I love hip hop first and foremost, okay? I can't even listen to Wu-Tang anymore when they come on the playlist. I'm like, I have to check, because it just doesn't feel right to me.
Right. Yeah, you start to change.
You just start to change in ways that you would have never, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong, we still want to listen to what we want to listen to and do what we want to do. I mean, it is what it is. We're works in progress. But I mean, that's just an example of some of the little things. I think just what I'm saying is as you continue to establish a relationship with God and you really realize who you are in Christ, right? You will make changes. You will evolve into someone.
Right. Because I think that love, all right, so this is what I believe. Love will want you to change.
Yes.
Right? So the love of God, the love for your family, the love for your kids, the love for yourself will help you change. And therefore, as you change with your love, then you give other people freedom to change for their love.
Yes.
Right?
And what people have to understand is forgiveness is not congruent with reconciliation. I don't have to reinstate you into my life. Right? Absolutely. But if I see you're really putting in the work and you really want to change as a person, again, you have to earn my trust, right? That's everything in the relationship. If you don't have trust, you don't have a relationship. So you lost my trust because, you disappointed me many times. You abused me and you took me for granted many times, and I still let you back into my life and gave you access. And so oftentimes, and they really too, when you really do decide to set those boundaries and come away, they don't believe you.
Right. Because we're very forgiving and we'll allow people. But what I'm learning over time is that love covers everything, right? I love myself not to allow myself to be engaged in this type of relationship. Exactly. I love you enough to know that this is not good for you either.
It's not.
So I'm going to be able to let you go. I think if we don't, because here it is. What are we teaching our children if we're not able to set boundaries, right? If we're not able to say, listen, because our kids watch everything. They can see how people treat you. They can see how you treat them. They don't like it, right?
And our children want boundaries.
Right.
They want discipline and they want boundaries. I feel like, when you're a permissive parent and you just, first of all, and you're not their friend. I never.
Yo, we talked. I don't know if you saw the show. We were talking about this, right?
Were you talking about that?
Listen here. So we were talking about.
And my son and I were only 15 years apart, okay? But you're still not my friend.
Say that again.
And there's times he'll try me, and even Rhonda, I'm not your friend.
Yo, I had this conversation, right? I'm so glad that you said that because I've brought this up a couple times on the show now. So I had some young men. They were I think they're 20. They're coming back on it in March, but they were saying that when we tell our children they're not our friends, it kind of crushed their spirit or hurt their hearts, right? So then I have 4 children, and I always tell my kids, I'm not your little friend out there. You know how parents say, I ain't your little friend out there. What we ain't going to be doing is this. You get a little deeper too. Even if you're the nicest parent in the world, I ain't your little friend, so you ain't going to be talking to me like that. So out of all 4 of my children, one of them have a problem with me saying you're not my friend. I'm not your friend. So these young men said, listen, it crushes their spirit because what if you're the only person, they want, as a friend, you want to be able to come and talk to somebody, right? You want to tell your friend everything, what's going on or whatever. And I was like, but there's a boundary, because if I treat you like you my friend, you're gonna feel like you're gonna say whatever you want to me or do whatever. And then I had Dr. Motley on the show and her mom last week, and she was like, no, I'm not your friend. So we go back and forth. It's interesting to hear different people takes on I'm not your friend. Because my daughter, who was upset at me saying I'm not your friend, well, don't be my friend, Mom. And she was so upset about it. And she's to this day, she still was like, because she wants to be able to, you can talk to me without being your friend. You can be able to share everything that, and it's crazy. It's crazy because she shared everything with me anyway.
Right.
I just be saying, listen, I don't know who you're talking to like that because I'm not your friend. Adjust yourself. Right. Because if we don't have these boundaries for our children, they're going to think that how they talk to their, with your friend, you be able to ride out, you joke and you say some crazy stuff. Because I say some crazy stuff to my sister. I say some stuff to my mom too, but I know when to not to say, when to cut it off. But when you start treating your parent as your friend or your child, like, yeah. So what's your take on I'm not your friend situation?
I just, I come from, again, like, I guess it's a Gen X thing, and just how I was raised to respect the hierarchy, first of all. And yeah, to be able to just, there are going to be things, there are going to be circumstances that I'm going to have to get involved in, and it's not going to be friendly.
Right. I got to make some unpopular decisions, right? I got to make some choices.
Yeah. So I certainly can be your confidant.
Right.
I'm big on making sure the lines of communication are there. Our children have to be able to come to us, but you have to set those boundaries.
Like, even as an adult, like, I know that there are certain things, like, I can joke with my parents, my bonus parents and my bio parents. I could joke with them, but there's certain... I
love how you say your bonus parent.
Yeah. I love that. So I'm very conscious, and sometimes I get little cross the line a little bit, and my bonus might be like, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
And I shrivel up like a little girl, like, I'm sorry, like, no. But it's that respect there. Like, you just don't, even as an adult. Now, our relationship throughout the years has changed because, again, I'm grown.
Right.
But it's still that respect thing. No matter,
right.
The old saying is, no matter how old you get, I can still beat your tail.
Still beat you down. And we have to get to a point too, I think, where we have got to get out of our own way in our family dynamic too. Our pride oftentimes gets in the way of us making solid decisions about our children. For example, and this is how it was in my family, again, with the hierarchy.
Right.
Say I had an aunt that wasn't, speaking to another aunt or, uncle, whoever. And I don't get involved in that. That's none of my business.
Right.
I'm still going to show you respect. As my aunt, as my uncle, as, whoever. Like, we just automatically knew that was none of our business.
Right.
Right? And those relatives didn't try to make us, get involved. They didn't pull us into that.
Yeah.
I don't see that anymore.
Now, but
it's different now. Now it's like, well, if you're not speaking to this, if I'm not speaking to this person, you can't speak to them. My kids can't speak to you.
Right.
I feel like, again, it takes a village. And when you're behaving that way, aren't you doing your children a disservice?
Right.
Because then there's a relative that they could very well be gaining a lot from.
Right.
And now they're not able to just because they pissed you off.
I think so. Here it is, because I've experienced that as well. So I think when you see trauma after trauma against the person that you love, right? And although you're an authority, and I respect you, and I love you genuinely, but how, like, seeing this type of trauma over and over again towards a person that you love does kind of bring a little resentment in your heart, right? Start to think. And the first thing I always thought is like, I ain't gonna do this to my kids when they get older. They not gonna do it. But I do recall the situation when me and my siblings wasn't getting along as well as we are now, because now we like this. But where I did, like, my children didn't get a chance to experience the goodness from them, the love from them, because I was hurt. See, that's what we talk about, this intergenerational curses, right? Because we're hurt, again, we start bleeding on our kids, and our kids, as you were saying, they don't get the joy of that person being in their life because of the issue you have. Like, as a parent, we gotta, like, whatever issue you got with that person, that's you, just grown folks stuff,
Yeah,
like you
we
said.
have a matriarch, you know, in my family who I have always been very, very, very close to. You know, I'm very much my grandmother's child. Because without my grandmother's love and support and prayers, and again, that was another moment for me when I realized, because she had passed a lot of her prayers and her Bible and things on to me. And I said to myself one day, I said, wow, you know, and she was so humble, you know, she had a son with Down syndrome she took care of, and she was just, you know, my grandmother could sit, I would sit and watch her eat like a cheese and tomatoes sandwich, and she would eat it with the same, you know, appreciation as she would a steak.
Right,
You know,
okay.
She was just so humble. But those same prayers that she, and I know because of the situations and things that I've been brought out of, like, I know she prayed for me. She prayed for all of us, but I know she prayed hard for me. And so that was when I realized, like, wow, like, again, when I was struggling with God, like, yeah, she was praying to Jesus. This is who she was praying to for me. And nobody can ever take me away from, you know what I mean, from that. Like, I know now with conviction, you know, looking back on things, but it's important, I think, that we really understand the family history, the patterns that and things that how things have been laid out, and really fully examine it. And some way, somehow, we have to get back to a place where we understand the importance of the village.
Absolutely.
And being raised by the village, you know, and how great that really can be, you know, for our children, because we have got to. The reason why we have so much gun violence out here now, and there's so much going on now in these streets, and our children are losing their lives, is because they were not parented.
Right, and they're not parented, and a lot of times they're being parented by parents who weren't parented either.
Exactly.
Or I like the whole village thing though, because I'm always saying that, you know, it takes a village to raise children, and parents need a village too. And I think in this society, this time, in this generation, there's so much pride involved. Oh, I can do this by myself, or you ain't got to, like the whole attitude of, I'm giving you the same energy that you gave me. I don't need you. But in reality, we all need each other.
Absolutely.
We really do. And I think that if we could just step away from the pride issue and stop thinking that we're an island. Because listen, I was there before. When I first went through a separation with my husband, I got this. I wanted to prove them, I could parent great. Like, I don't really need you to parent with me. I could do this on my own. And I remember, Rhonda, probably about a couple years afterwards, because after my ex-husband had left, 3 years later, my sister had passed away, right? So then I became a mother of four. Real fast, right? So, but I'm still trying to be this superhero mom, right? I got to prove these people wrong, that I'm not going to parent like I was parenting, and thinking I had to do everything for myself because I didn't trust anybody, right? So a lot of times that pride sits in is that you think that you could do all this stuff. Now, all things are possible to whom believe, right? I can do things, but it's so important to know that you need love and support, and you need a village. If not, I remember there was a situation where I was going to work, and I was going to school, and I was taking care of the kids, right? And finances were just like crazy because now I had 4 kids, right? And I was like, really, my house was about to go on foreclosure. Like, I felt like such a failure. I was like crying, and I wouldn't let anybody know what was going on with me. Like, I had such I need to be able to, I can't, listen, I slept on the streets and the train stations and the park. So what I'm not going to do is allow people to think that I went back there. Like, I'm not going to be homeless and stuff. Right. So I had such a pride issue where I literally shut down from everybody. And I was just laying there and crying and crying. I disconnected from people because I was, one, ashamed. And my pride was so big, it's like, okay, this is bad. And I didn't realize the importance of a support system. Yeah. Because I felt like growing up, I've never had that real support system. Exactly. So in return, though, my kids began to suffer because my pride. I wouldn't connect with people to help me out of a situation. Right. So I remember one time my sister, she had called me, and I didn't answer the phone for nobody. My prayer partner, now, mind you, I've been 6 o'clock every morning. We talked about everything, and this was early in our relationship. But I couldn't let them know what was going on with me, right? Because from the outside, everything looked good. You know, Donna's a nurse. She has a house. You know, she has a car. Pretty much that portion of lifestyle, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember just crying so bad. My sister and my parents showed up at my house. I was sitting on the floor crying, and they was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I finally had to break out. Listen, I'm about to lose my house. And I thought that was going to be the worst thing because, again, I was homeless before. So I was like, oh, man, I can't do this. I'm out here in the streets looking for places for me and my kids to live, you know, in the woods, in a car, like, because I'm, like, preparing myself that if I lose this house, I don't have no money because I had got injured. So it's crazy how you experience so much life, and that post-traumatic is so bad because it wasn't until probably about 5 years ago when I used to drive, like I always be looking for a backup plan, right? Even in Christ, loving God, I'm always looking for a backup plan. I'm like, all right, so if something happened to me, I'm gonna park my truck over there and the woods are over there under that bridge is what me and my kids gonna do. Like real life stuff because of the things that I've dealt with. And I was like, I gotta have a plan now.
And what he wants us to do is believe. And, you know, it's not really enough to believe in God. We have to believe into the, what is it, like over 7,000 promises, I think.
Yeah.
We're supposed to believe in the promises that he essentially, you know, made for us, for our lives that have already been there, you know. But we just didn't, you know.
Yeah, my faith was strong, but it still, again, life experiences, right? It kind of overtake you sometimes when things just, I'm telling you, sometimes it feels like Ashton Kutcher got a camera. I say it all the time. And he's like, yo, you just got punked. Because, I mean, how many things can pile up, right? So I just remember crying so bad and so ashamed. So I thought about, and that's how Parenting with Purpose kind of began, because it's like we need a village, right? We cannot do this on our own. You know, all these saying, oh, I don't need a man in the house. I don't need a father for my kids. It's literally putting out the wrong signal. Just because you and that man does not connect, your children need a father.
Yeah, so I never thought that my dad not really being around, and we have a great relationship now, you know, love him to death. He started over, you know, I have an 8-year-old brother, and my dad is just, he's amazing. He's an amazing father. But yeah, I didn't think that him not being in my life, I didn't think that it damaged me, but it did, because I chose bad partners. Because that relationship, you know, as a young girl with your father, you know, that's how you learn how to be treated, essentially.
Right.
You know, and I always tell, I've always told like my guy friends and stuff, you know, over the years that have girls, you know, when you, just little things like when you go to pick her up from school, take her some flowers, you know, and that's instilling in her early on that this is how she's supposed to be treated. So I didn't realize until I got older that not having my dad around really definitely did do a number on me. But yeah, I mean, and there's no substitute really, because I had uncles, you know, and I thought, well, I got my mom and I got my aunts and I got my, you know, my grandmother and I got everybody, and I don't, but you do need them. And that's the thing, the breakdown of our family system, especially in BIPOC community. It really bothers me. Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's good to be a strong woman, right? You know, I always say strong women. I think any person should be strong, whether you're a woman or a man.
Doesn't
like
matter.
Strong people.
And like one of the group homes, like when I lived in, is called a Union Industrial Home for Children. It was located in Trenton on Bellevue Avenue. I had briefly lived there with my son as a very young girl with him, and they had like offered like transitional housing for the residents there and that kind of thing. But anyway, I had reached out to them and I was trying to connect because I wanted to, you know, get involved and definitely donate to try to give back, because they did a lot of parenting classes. Like we were, you know, all very young with children, you know, unwed mothers, you know, and they had it was a structured environment for us. And so, but they have now become an organization called the Father Center.
Okay.
And I want to send you some information about that, because it would be great. And I'm sure, you know, there's somebody there that would love to come on your platform and talk about their projects. But they are, and I'm so excited because their focus is, we got to get the dads. We got to work on the dads. We got to work on the dads. We got to get them, you know, build them up and get them what they need and the resources so that they can be stronger for their families. Right. And I just love it. And I'm definitely going to
I think it's so important because I talk to a lot of, you know, we always hear from the single mom perspective, right? So I've had a couple guys on the show, and we're talking about the single dad perspective. perspective, and I actually have some more guys coming on because I want more men to be talking about. And it seemed like it's that disconnect from the mother and the father, and our children are suffering. Absolutely. Because I'm not with you, and it's just so much drama and things like that. But instead of like really thinking about the child,
yes.
you know, and a lot of a lot of dads has expressed to me that the reason why they can't have the relationship with their child like they want is because of the mom. Mm-hmm. And so they start to break down, you know, the mom don't want to see me with nobody else, so then they start, or if I don't pay child support, I can't see my kids. Like all these things that really outside of the relationship, like it's hindering their relationship with their children.
Absolutely.
And it's like we're hindering that. We keep saying, oh, the dads ain't nothing, we don't want them around, but yet we're hindering them from being around.
Yes.
So I think it's so important. Like I didn't realize how important. Again, I've seen, you know, single women like really hold it down, and then you get all these, you know, when you see professional athletes and stuff. I was raised by a single mom, so everybody's like, oh, it's okay to be a single mom. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. At the same time, it's so important for. Is that yours?
I don't know. Like what's going on. Yeah. I thought I turned it off. I'm sorry.
But it's so important to have the fathers in the house, as we said. And I think that as moms, we really need to work on those relationships so that we don't, again, we breaking those curses, right? We breaking, you know, time after time again, we see, you know, the lack of a man in the household, or even a lack of the man being connected to our children. Mm-hmm. And then they grow up and become that way. And then their children, children. So I think it's definitely part of that self-healing process, mm-hmm. you know, healing the inner child, healing yourself so that we can break some of these things, because we really, ultimately, we have the power to break it.
And it's not happening. The conversations are being had, but I just think where the breakdown, the dichotomy lies, like, right there when it's like, okay, the relationship doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. When the relationship doesn't work out, usually when those divisions are so powerful is at a time where there was hope, and then all of a sudden there's none, mm-hmm. and everybody's feelings at that point are just like, and they're at war.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and then there's nobody to step in and say, hey, you know what? Take some time. Don't be so rash about your decisions, mm-hmm. And just step away from the situation and try to look at it from that, you know, from the outside mm-hmm. looking. And the emotional intelligence, just really isn't there. So I think what we need to try to do is just continue to mentor.
Absolutely.
You know, continue to pray, and just I always pray for restoration for the family. Absolutely. You know, because family is very, very important. Mm-hmm. But you have to set those boundaries. It's healthy for everybody. You have to have those boundaries in place. And I have so much peace, you know, now for sticking with those boundaries and maintaining them. I can't see myself ever going back. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's when I realized that I actually had come to a place where I had healed.
I think that's so important you said that about really keeping the boundaries, because what happens is, you know,
that's emotional fences.
Yeah.
Basically. Emotional
and then we get into the people pleasing and stuff because we haven't set those boundaries, right? Because
and that's
we're
a whole
seeking
other conversation, because that's the codependency.
Yeah. So I think, and that's the importance of healing yourself, the inner child, because then you know, as a child, you want to please your parents all the time, or you want to please your friend. Like as children, they seek to please people.
Right.
So when you see an adult who's seeking to please somebody, it's because they haven't really dealt with the inner child. And I've experienced with that. You know, I could say that I'm still a work in progress because, you know, I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I want everybody to be okay. I want the peace, you know what I mean? Right. But at the same time, I realized something that I was part of this book club with my bonus parents, and we were reading a book by Pastor Tory Roberts. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that in the book, it talks about you not being a sacrifice.
That's
like,
it.
I'm not the sacrifice.
I'm not the sacrifice.
I constantly tell myself now, because before, like, it's like, it didn't matter what I was dealing with. I want the good for someone else, right?
So the name for that in the toxic family of origin mm-hmm. is the scapegoat.
The skip. Okay. Yeah.
It would be synonymous with being the scapegoat.
Yeah. So I always, I've never really told people no. I'm like, all right, I can help you with this. But then you get so burned out. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? We hear it over and over again. But you get so burned out. And then finally, like, I really had come to the conclusion, like, listen, I ain't just, so I had to remind myself, I'm talking about healing the inner child. I'm constantly telling myself, I'm not the sacrifice. You ain't going nobody
not
cross.
the sacrifice. And what it is I spent so many years, and I just want to, as we get ready to come to an end, I know we're winding down.
Yeah.
I spent so many years thinking something was wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It got in the way of me being able to have confidence, in my abilities and myself. And it wasn't until people started mirroring back to me, who I was and sharing with me, how they saw me, that, I started to believe, like, wow, like, I am lovable.
Yeah.
I'm it's not my fault. That wasn't my fault. So, and it's sad. I feel like it's taken me a long time to get here, but again, I wouldn't take anything from my journey.
Yeah.
Because I'm understanding now why I needed to go through everything that I needed to go through. And that's why I'm so transparent about a lot, because I really could care less what anybody thinks about me. I'm at that stage now, in my life where it's like, and it's very freeing. I've heard, I heard women talk about this stage for a long time where it's just like,
yeah,
you know who you are in Christ, and you're a good person, and it just doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. So we have to share those experiences, and we have to pass that share the information, pass it on. I don't want, if someone else can take something away from it and say, wow, okay, yeah, maybe it is my family and it's not me, because it can really take a toll on you. And keep you from your purpose, in life. And I really understand now why those people, they couldn't come with me. They just couldn't come with me. Now their story would be, and I know it is, well, she thinks that,
right.
And it's like, come on, that's not even me. That's not even my personality.
That's part of their personality.
But to maintain that toxic
yeah.
family dynamic. And that's the thing. Like, they don't want anything disrupting that.
Right. Wow. So I don't know if you guys have been blessed by tonight. Like, there's a lot of things that we said tonight that probably resonate with you. Just make sure that, again, the whole purpose of the show tonight is that, we need to heal the inner child. I think it's so important that we deal with our hurt, our trauma, our pain, so that we can be better for society, be better for our kids, be better for ourselves. And if we don't deal with that inner stuff, it's going to start spilling and bleeding all over the place. So I thank you, because we're going to have to do this again, because we didn't even get to the meat of it. I certainly appreciate you coming on the show and having a conversation. Having a conversation with you is always great. Like, we can be, hours and hours and hours talking about stuff.
We could go on and on and on. I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah. But I certainly appreciate the transparency and the openness when we talk about this type of stuff, because, this is a conversation that most people don't have. We don't talk about.
And I really, really appreciate you, giving the community this platform. And this opportunity, and God bless you. And he's going to continue to order your steps. And it's just amazing that you're giving people this platform to come on and even have these conversations.
Thank you.
We love you, doll.
Thank you. Thank you for joining Parenting with a Purpose. I am your host, Donna Janelle. As you know, we are bringing back the responsibility and nobility and beauty back into parenting. So check us out weekly at 7 p.m. on cmpradio.net.